We're talking to Cher Scarlett, principal software engineer at Apple, who says she had to invent a company to get work about 12 years ago. A very interesting story. So Cher, how did it all start? What were you trying to do?
I actually taught myself how to code when I was in middle school, not for any real purpose other than I'm just somebody who likes taking stuff apart and putting it together. I had a really rough childhood and kind of early adult life. I dropped out of high school and, long story short, ended up pregnant. I was like, I need a job. And because I dropped out of high school, like, even though I was very, very smart, I didn't have anything else to offer. I had worked in restaurants. Unfortunately, I had gotten into stripping. And that was really the only job experience that I had. And so it was kind of like the Hail Mary, of being like, okay, I can write code. Hopefully I can make a life for a small person. And so that was in Seattle, which is very expensive to live there. And unfortunately, the job that I got was only paying $27,000 a year. And as a single mom, my daycare costs were, with my rent, they were astronomical. Like, I couldn't afford to live off of the salary that I was getting. So I had to quit. And that's when I started freelancing. I moved to Central Washington and then, obviously to eventually to St. Louis. And I had one client that I worked with regularly, but there wasn't enough work from just him to be able to keep myself going. So I started answering Craigslist ads and people who are looking for websites or applications for their businesses. And during this time, I was teaching myself other programming languages so that I could pretty much do, whatever was needed. I had that skill to offer so that there was never something that I saw that I couldn't turn into an opportunity.
Then what happened when you tried to get work?
It was interesting because I had so many conversations with people where, I would kind of do a pitch of, okay, here's all of the things I can offer you to solve your problems. Here's some basic design ideas. And they would be like, okay, cool. Like, would it be all right if we talked with the programmers? And I'm like, well, I'm the programmer. When I said I was the one writing the code, men especially were very patronizing to me. It's almost like they just assume that you are not competent in what you're doing and that you shouldn't be writing the code, and that it would be better, they would be better served if they passed it off onto somebody else. They found somebody else to write the code. So the first thing I did was I talked to a couple of my friends, and they're like, I have not ever had this experience. And these are, men that I had worked with in the industry, and they're like, I have not had this experience. So why don't you try making an email that's less obvious that you are a woman? I was so annoyed. I was like, are you serious? And they're like, well, a lot of authors have done that. A lot of women in history have done that sort of thing. Scientists have done that sort of thing.
So you use an email address with just your initials and your last name.
When you do that, when you are programming, people automatically assume that you're a man because, they're like, C must stand for Craig or something like that. And so via email, that was working for me. People were much less condescending to me. It was working really well. But then it would get to the point where there was a phone call again, and I would always slip up and forget that I was trying to, because I wasn't necessarily trying to lie. I was just trying to just not say up front, my name is Cher, so clearly I'm a woman. So I was going by that route. But then again, I would lose them.
Did you notice people talking to you on the phone and realizing, oh my gosh, this is not who I thought it was. Now I'm not happy?
Yes. Suddenly their tone shifts because you said something that has offended them. And that's how I felt like it sounded. Like I was having conversations with somebody, and then I would slip up and say that I was the person doing the software engineering. And then it was very awkward silences and just that sense of like, I did something wrong.
And then would some people back out at that point?
I would say most people backed out at that point, yes.
So they were happy until they talked to you on the phone?
Yes.
Do you remember any particular stories or moments where you were really just struck by the fact that because you were female, it caused a disaster for a customer?
I'm going to say that one in particular, I went into a client's business in person. And I mean, I could see, you know, the look on his face that he was surprised that I was a woman, because I had never spoken to him on the phone. We had only communicated via email. I went into his office, and it was really funny because on his website, the one that he wanted to have redone, he had a picture of his quote unquote global headquarters, and he actually only had literally one room. So he was pretending to be bigger than he was to sell his, you know, drop shipped products. But me coming in there as a woman, like, I immediately saw the shock on his face, and I was trying to, he's not a web developer. He doesn't know anything about, you know, search engine optimization or web design or, you know, application development, nothing like that. And I was trying to go through the things that we had discussed via email, and he kept interrupting me. And then it got to a point where he was like, he asked me to take a typing test. And then he told me that the last person that he had spoken to was a man, and that he could type extremely fast on 2 different keyboards. I was like, I actually do type pretty fast, but, you know, that doesn't really make a difference, like how productive I am. I was like, it's all about the problem solving. It's all, you know, I tried to go back into my, you know, pitching and selling. And he was like, let me show you something. I'll show you what he did. And he goes up to his desk and pulls out 2 keyboards, puts them together like back to back, like a sandwich. And he's like, he was coding like this and running his fingers up and down the sides of these 2 keyboards smashed together. And he was like, yeah, I think I'm just going to give him a call. I didn't think I wanted to pay. He's like, but I think I see I need to. And again, there was never even a point other than this typing test he made me take that would have given him any indication that I did not know what I was doing. I had a portfolio. I had built a social networking site. I had built multiple sites, you know, shop e-commerce websites, you know, with backends, with, you know, and I was like in the first page of Google results for my job description and job title. So obviously I knew what I was doing, but apparently a typing test, and I didn't type fast enough or do some sort of magical thing that he probably made up to basically told me to leave.
Okay, so I didn't know that speed typing was essential for the job of coding and programming.
It's not. And the typing test he gave me, it's not like he asked me to write code. It's like, you know, it was like an internet. You go on a website and it tests your speed. It was just so bizarre and so 180 degrees different than the conversations we had via email, where he was like very excited, loved my design pitches and the outlines and wireframes that I did for, like, you know, how I was going to make his business better and make him more money. And then suddenly when I was standing before him, all of that was just gone.
So this is the kind of thing that you went through until you decided, hey, I'm going to fix it.
Yeah. And again, I was losing clients. Like I was at a point where people were putting deposits down and then they would pull out. And it wasn't because of anything I was doing. Like there was nothing I was doing. It was had no explanation whatsoever. And so that's when I started the St. Louis Webb Media brand. I made the email even more ambiguous by making it info@stlouiswebmedia.com. And I had my phone number and my address on there and everything. And when people would ask, could they talk to the engineering team, I'm not kidding you, I would just say that I outsourced the engineering to a great firm. No questions asked, nothing of me, nothing of the sort. It was just that simple. All I had to say was that, and they were fine with that. And I was the secretary, the PM, the designer. I could be everything except the engineer.
Could you actually tell a difference between before the brand and after the brand?
Oh, absolutely. Before the brand, I could only charge like $20 an hour, which at that time, like that was very, very low. There were people that were charging $100 an hour, you know. I had to go by an hourly rate, and I couldn't get deposits from people until I started using my initials. It was like on a very low end, to the point where people were like, you need to be charging more. And I'm like, I can't. People, they leave. They won't talk to me. But once I started the brand, I was able to charge those amounts that people were saying that I needed to be charging, to pay my bills and to be taken seriously.
How would you talk to people to avoid telling the part where you were actually the one doing the work?
I wouldn't say what my role in the company was. I would use we a lot. So like I would try to use like a team-based sort of like pronoun situation. And then when I was presenting design, I would do a lot of I think this, I think that, just sort of underhandedly being like, I'm the person that's doing the designing. And then I would say our engineer or our engineers, depending on the volume of work that was there. And then when somebody would ask me, like, can I speak with your engineering team? I would just say that I contracted out and that's not really, like, that I'm the point of contact, the liaison for that.
Wow. And it worked.
I did.
You survived.
I did.
So one question that I know people are going to ask is, why not just open your own company, a real company?
I wouldn't have even have known the first thing about business. I could talk and I could build things, and those were the things that I could do. I mean, even now, like, I'm not a manager because I don't have those skills to manage other people. I can manage a project and I have really great ideas and I can execute things, but that's what I'm good at. And even the managing the financial aspect was extremely difficult for me because that's why I still work as an individual contributor, because that's where I do my best work. And that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to build great things and make a living for myself and my child. And that's what I had to do. And if I had actually started a company, like, there would have been so much more involved in it. And that also takes money. And I was in poverty.
So in your eyes, you had to invent a fake company to get work.
It was really like the only career path that was open to me. I had tried to go back to college, but having a baby and not really, any other support. I grew up in an abusive home, and my father was not around, and my stepfather was really awful, and I really didn't want her to grow up the way that I did. And if I was working at fast food restaurants, which was really the only other option that I had, I wasn't going to be able to do that. I struggled my way to get her to school and keep a roof over her head, keep the lights on, keep food in her belly, like all of these things. The reason I was able to do that was because I freelanced, and that also gave me the space to learn all of these other things that eventually led me into the career track that I got into starting in 2011. And now 10 years later, I'm at Apple near the tippy top of an engineering career without being in management.
Wow. Okay, last question is, what do you want people to take away from this now in 2021?
I think one of the biggest things that, even just from posting that surprised me, is that so many people were shocked. My story isn't unique. This is something that a lot of women have had to do in order to make it, and to be successful. I think that an important aspect is, at the time, for a lot of us, we don't realize that the reason we have to do it is because we're not being taken seriously. The reason I had to do it is because I needed to survive, but also because I actually thought I didn't belong. Role models and representation is so important, not only because it gives young people or people aspiring a place to see themselves in, but it shapes the biases that other people have. The more you hammer a piece of information into a person's mind, the more that becomes factual and reality and their expectation. And it's very difficult to change those. It takes a lot of time, and that's why representation is so important.
Congratulations on persevering.
Thank you. I feel weird accepting a congratulations because I feel like I didn't have a choice. I'm like, I just had to keep going. Like, there was no other option.
You could have given up.
That is true, which I refused to do.